Christian Weedbrook.
Christian Weedbrook.
You need to have kind of an insane belief in what you're doing, a belief in yourself. There'll be more failures than successes, but it doesn't really bother me. What would bother me is if I never tried. The other thing is just good old-fashioned hard work. Like, you just got to keep working all the time. Like, I work, and so do a lot of the team at Xanadu, 7 days a week, mornings, afternoons, and night times. And it is hard sometimes, but most of the time it's like, I want to do this. I'm not forcing myself to do it. So that goes back to that value that we have of enjoying what you're doing. If you could promise me that here's a product, let's say it's a new shoe. I don't know anything about shoes. I will guarantee that you will become personally a billionaire if you make this shoe, but it'll take 10 years. I couldn't do that, even if I knew it was 100% sure that this would be lead to a successful company and me being a billionaire, because I can't get up each day to put in the effort that's needed for a shoe, because there's nothing wrong with shoes, but I don't care about them. That's key, like finding something that you're truly passionate about. You want to follow the advice of people who are actually living their own advice. And to be fair, the people who say you can't do it are also living their own advice too.
Welcome to Get Mic'd, the podcast exploring the ins and outs of building a notable brand. I'm your host, Katie Zeppieri, founder and chief brand strategist of the MicDrop agency. In today's episode, I sit down with Christian Weedbrook. Christian is the CEO and founder of Xanadu Quantum Technologies, a quantum technology company building fault-tolerant quantum computers using light. Over the last 15 years, he has been at the forefront of bringing quantum technology to the world through his research and leadership in academia, government, and industry. Christian holds a PhD in physics from the University of Queensland and held postdoc positions at MIT and the University of Toronto. In this interview, Christian breaks down how quantum computers truly work and how they are changing the world. He also shares insights on how to raise over $250 million, his enthusiasm for creating job opportunities for physicists and academics, the future of quantum computing, and what it takes to be the founder of a unicorn startup valued at over $1 billion. I hope you enjoy and learn as much from this conversation as I did. Christian, welcome to Get Mic'd.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And you're the CEO and founder of Xanadu. And Xanadu is working to bring the first commercially available quantum computers to market. Now, for those listening who don't know much about quantum computing, how would you define quantum computing? How would you sort of break that down, and why is it important?
I get asked that question quite a bit. And what I always revert to is looking at the name. You got quantum and you got computer. So the first thing I say to people is it's still a computer. Like, it sounds magical, and it is, but it's still a computer, and we're very familiar with computers. The idea why the word quantum essentially means now you're using properties of quantum physics. So you can think of quantum physics as being, if you zoom in onto anything, our body, this table, you'll get to, keep zooming in and you'll get to the atoms and electrons. Those things at the atomic level have very different properties, and we use them. So basically we build quantum computers out of atoms and electrons and photons, and we can do some really cool things with that. To the second part of your question, these cool things really are, very important things like drug discovery, material design, finance, and also artificial intelligence, which obviously we hear about every day now. And really the idea there is, the simple idea is that whatever you can do for certain problems, you can do much, much faster if you use a quantum computer.
Now, how did you get into this space? I don't think people accidentally fall into quantum computing. You have a doctorate in quantum information theory from the University of Queensland. Mm-hmm. What got you interested in quantum computing?
It was really, so when I did my undergrad, I always loved mathematics. And as I was doing more and more courses, it kind of moved into applied math. And then it got very applied, it became physics. So in my undergrad, I did math and physics. After that, I thought, I'll see if I can do a master's. It's called an honors in Australia. And then I did that, and that was in quantum security. So now it's getting very applied, but really to do with quantum physics. And then for my PhD, I was looking at quantum computing using photons or light. And so really is a natural progression in terms of the academic side. But before that, when I was a teenager and to this day, I would devour any book on businesses and biographies and things of that nature. So I was always kind of hoping that it'd be fun to be kind of like at the start of an industry like Henry Ford, Rockefeller, and those people from over 100 years ago. How do you be an entrepreneur, but where you've got a chance to be part of a very big industry? So really those two things came together. And then myself, along with others at Xanadu, particularly the early, say, first 50 or more hires, we all came from academia. So it was a case of could we all work together to commercialize the research that we're a part of?
Now, Xanadu launched the world's first cloud-deployed photonic quantum computer. So I'm hearing that there's potentially like a couple different types of quantum computers, and you're specializing in photonic. Can you describe for us the difference?
Yeah, for sure. So one place to start is the main categories of building a quantum computer. You can break them into two main large groups. One is either using photons, like we're doing at Xanadu, or the second one, you can use electrons. Now, the last 50, 60 years, we're very familiar with electrons. That's electronics, and the other side is photonics. And, our computers are made of electronics, our phones and so forth. And so you can do quantum versions of both. So as mentioned, we're using the quantum photonics version for ours. And there's, as you said, we have the world's first and still only publicly available photonic quantum cloud. And then there's kind of the other bucket. And the other bucket has been around historically longer. And doing great results. You can think of that as companies like IBM, Google, there's Rigetti, there's Amazon, and quite a lot of them out there that are using this electronic-based approach. Now, all of them have potential to be, the winners at the end of the day. We think there'll be a few winners. And each of them has their pros and cons as well. It's a very, very difficult thing to build this quantum computer.
You mentioned this desire to be at the forefront of something, to create a category, to build something that nobody's built before. That takes a great amount of courage, and you need to be bold. You fundamentally have to have, I believe, a lot of self-belief in order to take on a challenge like that. Was there a time in your past growing up where you really developed those entrepreneurial chops and felt like, you know what, if I have an idea, I really believe that I can bring it to action?
Yeah, it's probably, it's always a combination of nature and nurture, I guess. And, going back to when I was 12, 13 or so, I would discover these books on Henry Ford, Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, and people have done, very big, ambitious things and built very big companies. And when I read these things, it felt very natural to me. It felt like home. It felt like, hey, I could do that. Now, whether I could do that or not, that's a whole different story. But it resonated with me, much like if someone picks up a guitar for the first time and just feels like home, very natural. So I don't know. It's a bit innate, I guess. And the more I read, the more I would learn. And it's been decades now learning every day about this sort of stuff. And now I get a chance to put into practice. So it just felt very natural. It's still very, very difficult. But I think entrepreneurs have, a higher risk tolerance. And, it's not like I set out to have this risk tolerance. I think it was innate. But really, honestly, the main theme is just following what you enjoy doing. And you want that overlap between what you enjoy and what you're good at as well.
Talk to us about the beginnings of Xanadu, because for a lot of entrepreneurs, the first idea is not the one that becomes their company that turns out to be successful. Oftentimes there's trial and error. And I understand that you were working on 2 startups when you first began. So take us to that starting place when you kind of first had the concept, and how do you really work to get the idea off the ground?
I was always hoping that this love of entrepreneurship and the research I was a part of in quantum computing would merge. And I remember reading about, I'm losing track of the time now, it could have been like 10 years ago or so, a quantum company was funded. And it's like, I just stood there and I still remember I was sitting in my chair and it's like, wow, they got, I think $200,000 or a couple of million, like there was 2 tranches. And it's like, that's incredible. I didn't know you could get that for something that was still far away at that point. And you're right, I had two companies and they were overlapping over a period of a year. The first one that I did start was called CipherQ, and that was also part of my research trying to commercialize that, where it's quantum security. So using quantum physics to give you very high levels of security that traditional methods cannot give you. And then when I was trying to raise money, I got some money actually. I got some money from Boeing, I think it was, and U of T let me stay there an extra year because I was a postdoc at U of T. The other impetus, I guess, was the fact that my postdoc had run out. And typically you do a postdoc. I did two at U of T. I did one before those two in Boston as well. And you're encouraged to leave the university. You can't stay. You're supposed to try and get a job as a professor at that point. And I loved Toronto. I fell in love with it and wanted to stay. So it's like, well, I got nothing, now. I don't want to leave the city. So let's try merge these things and let's try actually achieve a startup. So I did CipherQ. But I got some funding that allowed me to pay the rent. There were times there where I got some eviction notices, but it didn't really bother me. It didn't feel risky because I loved what I was doing. I had a lot of freedom as well. I think that's a characteristic of entrepreneurs is, you want to be your own boss, as much as possible. So, but I'd hear a lot from investors while I was trying to raise for CipherQ about quantum computing. They would say, hey, are you interested can you also do do you know much about quantum computing? I said, yeah, that was part of my research as well, my field of research. So over time, if you think of at that point in time, the investor as the customer was saying we would give you money for some other idea. So I then started Xanadu. In 2016, wrote a white paper about kind of the vision and went back to the same investors and they were interested. And I still remember getting the first check and kind of wire of the first amount of funding. It was $2 million. And I would, they said it would get wired on a particular day, let's say Monday, and I would be checking Monday. And then when it goes in, I just couldn't believe that amount of money was in a bank account, and you'd refresh and still there. And, the last round that we raised was 100 million. The one before that was 100 million. So 200 million in the last two raises. And in total, we've got near $300 million through VCs and government grants. And that money still does not seem as big as that first $2 million because it was just amazing. So I still, that's one of my vivid memories of the early days there. And then also once we got the money, we could then start hiring people. And that was a fun process too, because I knew the people that were in my field that I was a part of, and I could reach out to them. Also some really great early hires from U of T, and it really just went from there. And very exciting, different time to what it is now. As the company matures, things change, but it's still a lot of fun. But that was feels like a long time ago.
You've raised an impressive amount of money thus far, and it's interesting to hear you talk about your first, which was Boeing. And for entrepreneurs, that is a scary leap to make because up until that point that somebody writes you a check, it's just an idea in your head that you're trying to convince other people to believe in. Can you describe for us what that process is like and maybe any tips that you have for how to convince someone to believe in your company idea?
So our last round was Series C, and that was 100 million. Our Series B before that was also 100 million, but I still have this number, 143, in my head. And we went through 143 VCs to get to that first one that says yes. So that to me is the best example. You just keep trying very, very hard until you get that yes. There has to be someone that says yes. Or in my case with going from CipherQ to Xanadu, them giving you tips, say, if you did this, I would fund you. Now, I wouldn't advise anyone to do something for the money. In my case, it was I enjoyed both, quantum security and quantum computing. But honestly, at least in our experience, it's just a numbers game, and you've just got to go through as many as you can, not give up, keep a spreadsheet of everyone you talk to. And the 143, I should mention, some were very quick no's. Some didn't get back, and then there were quite a few second or third meetings, and then they say no. So it's much more than, say, 143 interactions per se. So, so honestly, how do you fail if you don't give up? That's how I would look at it. Now, it doesn't apply in every scenario. When I was a teenager, I would start my own little companies and stuff like that, startups. They were kind of ridiculous, and they failed. But and Xanadu can still fail. You always have to have that. One of our values is impermanence, and that should be, I think, it feels like sometimes a fundamental law of nature, because nothing lasts. We end up dying, and there's nothing we can do about that. The time is something that we don't know. There's that funny quote, maybe by Charlie Munger, who said, "I wish I knew exactly when and where I'd die, because I'd avoid it." And that's essence of impermanence, and that applies to businesses. Amazon has something very similar with a day one sort of mentality. And so Xanadu will end, but the goal is to kick the can down the road every day, every month, every year, and every decade, and see how long we can get.
Where did the name Xanadu come from?
That's a fun question to answer. We get that a lot. And what's good, I didn't realize this, but Xanadu has a lot of people say, did it come from this Rush song? And I'm like, who's Rush? I know who they are now, but being Australian, I didn't know. And people say, is it from the Kubla Khan poem? So it's an old poem. I said, no, it's actually from the song Xanadu, which is from the movie Xanadu, and it stars Olivia Newton-John, and she sings this. And the history of that was, I was thinking about calling the company Beatles, which would be silly, and then I thought maybe Lennon or McCartney. That was silly. And then I thought Electric Light Orchestra, ELO, which is one of the famous bands, particularly in the 70s. And that was cool because it had light in the word, which is photonics. And then that didn't feel right. And then Jeff Lynne, the lead singer and writer of the band, he wrote Xanadu. So it kind of comes full circle. And the other thing I mention to people, which a lot of people don't know, is Olivia Newton-John. She's passed away now, which is sad because we were always hoping her to come sing one day if we got big enough. Her grandfather was one of the most famous physicists of last century, and up there in quantum physics, up there with the best. And Max Born is his name, and so there's a lot of cool connections there. But it's also fun. It's also a great fun song, but there's a lot of great connections that other people bring to it as well.
You mentioned the value of impermanence, which I really like. Talk to us about the other core values at Xanadu and how you sort of think about those values on a day-to-day basis and as you're growing your company.
The values are really important, and we develop them very early on in the company's lifetime, and because it's very important to culture, and you can point back to these and say, this is what we would like if you're going to be at Xanadu. You need to kind of exemplify these values. And so there's 8 of them. And impermanence, as you said, is one. The first 2 always resonate. So when we talk to people, both through the interview phase or if I'm checking in on someone at work, the first one is, are you enjoying what you're doing? And it doesn't mean that every day is amazing, but for the most part, on average, you'd rather be doing this than any other job. And, one of actually our biggest achievements, I honestly think, is we have over 200 people, is giving 200 people jobs. And, a job is very important in life. It gives you purpose, meaning, and obviously it helps you pay the bills as well. But, a lot of us initially were physicists. And so we've been able to give, so many physicists a job, and they get to keep working on what they do. So at the heart of what we do is really, are we enjoying it? Knowing that not each day is amazing, but as I said, you'd rather be doing this than anything else. The second one that's very important is, are you learning? Are you learning every day? It can be a little bit, it can be a lot, but if you look back on your week, did you increase your knowledge? Did you learn something? When I was a teenager, there was a period when I was trying to work out what I wanted to do, and I was probably learning, but not a great deal. And it's a horrible feeling to look back on a week and think, I didn't really learn much, And when you go through school, and if you go to university, you just take it for granted because you're forced to learn. You have to pass the exams and so forth. So that's important, and those two are very important. And thankfully, at a quantum computing company, there's no shortage of learning things. It comes very naturally. People are discovering things every day at Xanadu, literally, and that's a new thing I have to learn personally, or at least at a high level. So that comes easily. And some of the other values are a sense of urgency. It's always key to do things yesterday. Effective communication is key as well. That can be defined in any way. We really define that as, checking in on people and sort of, understanding, coming back to the values essentially. And also we have an asking and please culture. Can you do this for me? Such and such, please, that sort of thing. Because I think it gets, you may be, kind of telling someone to do it, but if you ask in an asking way, they become much more motivated to do that. I think it's just a human nature thing that we probably all would like. So yeah, there's some of the values. And originally, it's probably just me, but I find values from a lot of the big companies kind of a bit BS.
Yeah.
And I look at them and like think bold or stuff like that. And like, what does it mean? And to be fair, someone could look at impermanence. What does it mean? But it's a little bit different, that word impermanence. So I don't think it appears on every value sheet that companies have. So I kind of thought it was disingenuous. And as you get bigger, maybe we all fall into the same trap, honestly, as you have too many, the scale just gets too big and then you've got to act like a large corporation. There's many things I've learned why corporations do certain things as we've gotten older. When you start off, you're like, I don't like how, someone is let go. I don't like how such and such done. And then you realize there's reasons why these things are done in a certain way. We try to push back, but anyways, that's our values are very important. And if people, that's another way when people, we make them an offer, if they can look at that and say, well, those things resonate with me and I'd love to join this culture and this company.
Sort of showcases the DNA of the company.
That's right, yes.
Really interesting to hear how you use those core values to shape your hiring processes. And I could imagine building the right team is critical to the success of any company. You're also in a space where you're in uncharted territory. I had somebody describe for me quantum computing from their perspective as the closest thing we have to magic. And I thought that was really interesting. So what are some of those qualities and traits in addition to the core values? What do you look for in the people that you hire?
Well, in the first 50 up until 100 hires, most had some connection to university. Either they had a PhD or a master's or something like that. So in one sense, it's quite restrictive because the talent pool is constrained. But constraints also lead to very good decision making as well, because like if a painter is told you can only paint within this canvas, they're not asked to paint the whole world. And so that helps a lot in making decisions and just getting stuff done. So it was a good thing. And I knew a lot of people already from academia, being from academia, and then you'd hire very good people and they would recommend other very good people. So in the first 50 to 100, it really was about, do you have the right, what papers did you publish? What is your publication record like? What does your supervisor say about you? It was very, very technical. So that was what it was. I think we got lucky that a lot of these people that we hired had kind of both sides of their brain, in the sense that they could do fundamental hardcore research, but then they could lead people as well and have that emotional intelligence that we talked about before. That's very rare. It's not impossible, but we got very lucky, I think, in terms of that. Really great people. And a lot of those people that have that, those both sides of the brain and from the early days are still with us and have very important roles. So, and at that point, the first year or two, we didn't have any values. So, there has to be some sort of like luck, whatever that means, in hiring. It could go south quite quickly. But, I think also having this field of quantum computing, like you said, it's magic. It really is magic a lot of time. We can understand, can kind of quantify certain things, but why nature acts that way, it's very, it's magical, a lot of fun. So I think those are the ones. As we went beyond 100, we would do the same sort of things as everyone else. We'd have, interview panels. We'd have the values by that stage, making sure people, working hard in anything endeavor is very important. So how do you check for work ethic? Well, that's a hard one. And at the end of the day, honestly, I would say you never know how someone is going to be until you hire them. You can do everything. I read somewhere that maybe Google had like 9 rounds of interviews or something like that, and they still only got 50%, so a coin toss. So what they could have done is just flip the coin in front of someone and just, depending on whether it's heads or tails, hire them. And they would have got the same result. So I think the first 3 months is very important. So with the probation period, we always let the leaders know you got to act quickly during the 3 months. You got to really see you've got enough time now. It's still not perfect, but much better than what you made the offer. And I think like a lot of companies and startups, maybe every company, we've taken too long to let people go that haven't worked out. And it just doesn't suit. It doesn't work out for everyone. It's not working out for the person, therefore it's not working out for the company. But, we want to work with nice people, but smart people. And I think sometimes like everyone else, we've waited too long to let people go. So people have to get better at that, because you also the best people want to work with the best people. So a lot of the stuff I'm mentioning now, apart from the huge cohort of PhDs, applies to any company that you build. And we try to keep ourselves mindful of, look, at the end of the day, we're solving a customer problem. We're still just a company. Now, having said that, it's really cool as well. But at the end of the day, we can't lose sight of the fundamentals.
Xanadu has been valued at over $1 billion. That is extremely impressive. And you have raised a lot of money. What's the total amount of money that you have raised thus far?
So far, we've raised $250 million USD, but that doesn't include about $55 million Canadian from the Canadian government, who's very supportive of us. So far, I guess in USD, it's like $275 million USD.
And when you have that amount of money, it's almost hard for founders who are just starting out to kind of fathom that amount of money in terms of investment in a company. And of course, not every company needs that much in investment. But how do you know how to spend that money? How do you know what are the right decisions to make? And I think that there's a great amount of responsibility that you must feel when you take on that sort of investment to say, what are the right decisions that I can make that do right by my team, that do right by my investors?
We always come back to the Xanadu mission. And Xanadu mission is to build quantum computers that are useful and available to people everywhere. So we have that as a guiding light, and that can be broken down to the different teams, what they need to achieve, their kind of mini mission statement. And then we block out, well, how do we achieve that? So we really start with a mission and work the way backwards. We feel a lot of responsibility. It doesn't matter if there's like 20 million or 200 million or 2 million in the bank account. We have the same respect for the money no matter what it is. We try to be as thrifty as possible, given the fact that we still need to raise a lot more. But what happens after, I mentioned the excitement of the 2 million, what starts happening, you just start thinking about 10 million and 20 million. For your next raise after. Like, for instance, now we're thinking about 200 million for our next raise. It could be less, it could be more. And so, but it doesn't feel like a real number anymore. How do you understand what 250 million is, for instance? So you get kind of, it just becomes a number after a while, but you can't let that be, okay, we might as well spend whatever we want. So I think having ingrained the thriftiness and frugality is very important in the mindset. And, having said that, and getting back to your question of, how do we spend it? We know hardware is key in what we're doing here, the photonics that I mentioned before. So we need to do chip runs. So we're a fabless company. So what that means is we design our own chips here in Toronto and send them out to different foundries around the world. They make the chips for us with our input, and we get them back. That costs a certain amount of money. And so we then say, well, how many chip runs do we need to do per quarter, per year? And that's going to just tell us how much money we need to spend. So, and throughout this, our budget really is half the money is on salaries typically. So then how do we know how to spend that? Well, it comes back to how many people do we need to solve our problems that we've set. So it's a lot of money, and it doesn't become real after a while. But I think having that mission and then working out what you want to achieve, and also when you raise the money, say 100 million, you've got it mapped out beforehand. So when you go, you say, here's the operational budget, and this is what we're going to spend it on, and this is the reason why. So step by step has always been the way to sort of figure out these large amounts of money.
Yeah. How do you eat an elephant sort of one bite at a time?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Otherwise, it'll be too overwhelming, and we probably wouldn't get anything done.
Let's talk about some of the marketing and branding angles of Xanadu. I understand that Xanadu is seeking to address challenges in cryptography, optimization, and machine learning. Talk to us about your target market. So fundamentally, who are you selling to? What is the product? What is it that you are selling? And how are you serving them currently?
Well, the end goal is to serve them as best we can with a very large scale quantum computer. We have quantum computers now, so do others in the industry, but they're not large enough. And so they would take up, a couple of rooms of this size of where we are now. But the ultimate goal for us and others is to build a quantum data center. So you think of a bunch of quantum computers that fill out half a football field or an acre of land, that big, very much like a traditional data center. So that's the end goal. We're not there yet. So because we're not there yet, the type of customers is more a lot of proof of concepts, partnerships, and things of that nature. And in fact, in the last few years, the thing we've been focusing on the most is let's assume we have this data center already. What problems could it solve in material design particularly? And so even more specifically, we work with car companies, automobile companies, to work on how would this quantum computer in the future help you discover new materials that can lead to new generation of batteries, so energy storage. So when you think of that, perhaps think of things like a single charge now through new materials. It can be charged 10 or 100 times faster. A single charge can last 10 or 100 times faster. Still just as safe and so forth. And you need a different type of computer to come up with these extraordinary order of magnitude gains. And that's what a quantum computer promises. So when we work with, in our last round, we had Volkswagen put in $10 million. And when we work with them, they're great supporters of us. They tell us what their biggest computational problems are because they know their business better than us. For us, we know quantum computing very well. And then the two meet in the middle. And through that, we form partnerships. We also file patents, publish papers, and all of that. And all this can be thought of as a preparation stage with customers. So when we get a year or two out from the actual large-scale data center, quantum data center, we can now start solving the customer problems. So all of these things really are characteristics of deep tech companies where, it's like the internet or PC revolution in the 70s. You don't really know what these things are going to be used for. Like when you look back at these, say, Apple II in like 75 or 76, what they were promoting is that at the time, housewives could put this Apple II into the kitchen and they can read the menus, recipes off it.
Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't only till the end of that decade that people started coming up with spreadsheets, like Excel, things like that, word processing documents. And then in the 80s, the businesses would really love this. The internet, we all know that, no one probably would have predicted the extent of social media and how it's used now and things of that nature. And marketing and brand is huge on those social media platforms. So I think quantum will follow the same sort of trend. We know it'll be just as transformational, but how? We have some ideas and we're working with customers, but the real big insights will come after we build this data center.
That makes sense. Even still, while sort of the use cases are to be discovered, do you think intentionally about the brand of Xanadu, sort of the intangibles and what it represents and how you show up, in many different platforms? Is that something that you're thinking about and intentional about today?
We are. We love our Xanadu logo. I think it's kind of a cool logo.
It is a cool logo.
Yeah, it's funny actually. Yeah, and it's funny. When we walk around, I live across the street from work, and we're at Young and College area, and it's fun sometimes walking around. You see the Xanadu logo, people are wearing it, and that's kind of cool as kind of a brand recognition. And even people that don't work at Xanadu, we have a shop, Xanadu shop online, and people buy like shirts and hoodies that have our logos. So it is very intentional. We're thinking 50 years ahead with our company. If we can survive, we hope we can, think we can. So you want a brand that can last that long as well. And so the name seems to be successful in terms of the interest, and so does the logo. But there's also, we do hardware, as I mentioned, with photonics. We also have our software, which is called Penny Lane, named after the Beatles song.
You got the Beatles reference in there somewhere.
Exactly. My goal is I'd love to be sued by them one day, just to sort of say, hey, we got sued by the Beatles. Hey, we'll take it down. Can I just have a meeting with Paul McCartney to say hi? And then I'll do it. That's the end goal. And Penny Lane, on the website down the bottom, it really illustrates, it says something like, it says, at the bottom of the website, it says about what Penny Lane is about. And Penny Lane's our software for quantum computers. It says made with love. And it really is. And that's when I think of brand. When you buy something, a product, you can kind of tell most times if someone cared about the product. Like it was done, they love the product. They love what they do. And that comes back to one of our values as well. Like we love what we do. And let's show people we don't want to cut corners. We want to do something with love. And so that really ties into the brand. So it's a huge yes. And we think about that all the time. And, we continue to think that way.
Penny Lane, not Penny Love.
We love it, though.
It's made with love.
Exactly right. Yes, exactly.
Penny Lane is an open source software library for quantum computing. And for someone on the outside who doesn't understand sort of this mission, this open source mission, this is information sharing, is it not? It's giving access to the world, giving the world access to technology that they can then build upon.
Exactly. Open source doesn't technically mean it's free, although it is free for us. So we don't charge anyone per se. Anyone can download it, but you're free to edit the software. So someone, for instance, we have Penny Lane. Someone in principle could take all of our code and make Penny Love. For instance, and just copy
I'm going to start
it.
Penny Love.
Exactly. So just do that. Copy the code base. So it's all open source. And the reason we did that is it's not an uncommon strategy, but why we did it is we want to really build the ecosystem. So build the amount of developers and users around Penny Lane. So they love it and will use it. So when the hardware does come of age, like I mentioned, this data center, then it's like they're already used to it and they'll keep using it and they'll therefore use our hardware. Penny Lane is actually available on everyone else's hardware too, not just our photonic-based approach. So it is a universal software. It's agnostic to other people's to hardware in general. And we see a great love of Penny Lane. In fact, every February we have a Penny Lane developer conference, which we call QHack. And QHack now is the total amount of visitors, participants, has over 10,000 in the last 4 years. So it is one of the most widely used in the world. And another pretty cool stat that I was talking to someone about last night is that Penny Lane now is being taught in curriculums in universities around the world. So I think we have 21 countries, but over 75 universities around the world. And there's a map of it. And it's really worldwide. So it's pretty amazing. And again, it's about, sharing this open source code. Hopefully people love it and they can really start prototyping ideas and algorithms and potentially use cases that they want to do once the hardware comes of age.
Now, you have established partnerships with a number of global enterprises such as Volkswagen, as you mentioned, NVIDIA, the list goes on and on. Mm-hmm. Partnership forming can be a really good strategy for startups getting off the ground and also as they're scaling. What has been your experience? If there's any sort of examples that you can give us about what it takes to sort of make a partnership a good one, like what makes it a good fit, how to perhaps think strategically about partnerships, but fundamentally any tips you have for how founders can think about that as a strategy.
Patience is the first thing. So to get these partnerships, let alone if they're successful or not, takes years to do. In the early days, we work with banks and the banks take a long time to work with them. And then we move to things in the last 4 years, material design. So the car companies I mentioned before. The good thing there is these companies, car companies, were looking to work with quantum companies. And so we're one of the leaders. So it was a nice match. But I would say for other founders, it's patience to get these things and grind day in, day out. And it could take a year or two to actually get the partnerships. As mentioned, we got $10 million from Volkswagen. That took time as well. These things take a lot of time. I would say if we're living up to our values, that's really important. And if we do that, we're having a good partner relationship. But what's very interesting, it's maybe old-fashioned, but simple things like saying please and thank you. And then also once you've had a meeting, have a follow-up email and say thank you for your time.
The follow-up, the magic of the follow-up.
Yeah. And they may get back and say thanks or they may not, but it will leave an impression. And so if you want to keep that partnership going strong, so it's very simple, but I've dismissed that suggestion years ago. I'd still do it because I thought everyone did it. Now, if I had to guess, less than 5% of people do that. So I think you can get ahead of any partnerships. And so really you want to be someone that you would like to work with and do these simple things. Don't take them for granted either. Even if you have another customer that maybe looks better, don't just suddenly end it with someone else. Don't just look for the next shiny thing. Think long term, think decades ahead. And how do you have these customers that are with you for decades? Now, we're not a typical company by any means. It's still all about the hardware, more so than the customer here. But once we are successful, we have these large-scale quantum computers. This sort of thinking will be very important going forward.
You have truly achieved a remarkable amount of success. Like, you should be so proud. I mean, you are building a new category, building the world's first cloud-deployed photonic quantum computer. You're building this impressive team. You're forming these partnerships. You're doing it. You are actively living out this dream that you had of being like a Henry Ford or someone who just changes the world for the better. What are you most proud of thus far in your journey?
It would be, as I said before, I think it really is giving people jobs. I think that means a lot. So, and particularly physicists, it's fun giving anyone a job. But physicists typically, and I went through this, if you wanted to stay in academia, it's very hard. You would have to leave your city, go to a small town, I don't know, in Europe, and you may want to continue there, but the job openings are not there. So we've been able to give people, and the ability to live in Toronto. Most of the people, of the 200 people, are in Toronto. So giving them jobs, whereas before they would have typically gone to a bank or a consulting. They're two common ones for PhDs in physics. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's whatever you want to do, but at least having another option. When I finished my PhD, there were really no quantum companies hiring. And now us and others in the ecosystem are giving all these jobs and creating this industry. So honestly, I think that's the biggest thing I'm proud of.
I love that. What traits do you feel have helped contribute to your success as an entrepreneur? Because I don't want everyone to lose sight of the fact that you shared 173 VC meetings, before you get a yes. Like, we see the successes, we see the news stories, we see the headlines, but there were a lot of no's and no doubt challenges along the way. What do you feel has contributed to your success from like a skills and traits perspective?
I would say you need to have kind of an insane belief in what you're doing, a belief in yourself. Like, you'll find a way. You'll get knocked down. You'll get knocked down more than what you achieve. There'll be more failures than successes, but it doesn't really bother me. What would bother me is if I never tried. And so I always have this kind of weird belief that, like we're doing with the team, if we get the right team, work in the right industry, it's hard to stop us. So belief is very important. The other thing is just good old-fashioned hard work. Like, you just got to keep working all the time. Like, I work, and so do a lot of the team at Xanadu, 7 days a week, mornings, afternoons, and night times. And it is hard sometimes, but most of the time it's like, I want to do this. I'm not forcing myself to do it. So that goes back to that value that we have of enjoying what you're doing. I said this yesterday to someone: if you could promise me that here's a product, let's say it's a new shoe. I don't know anything about shoes. Here's a guarantee. I will guarantee that you will become personally a billionaire if you make this shoe. And I can guarantee that to you. But it'll take 10 years. I couldn't do that, even if I knew it was 100% sure that this would lead to a successful company and me being a billionaire, because I can't get up each day to put in the effort that's needed for a shoe, because there's nothing wrong with shoes, but I don't care about them. I don't collect shoes. I wear shoes, but that's the extent. And so that's key, like finding something that you're truly passionate about. And also knowing that you'll find a lot of people that will say that's not true. Like, there's a lot of people out there that says that's you can't follow your passion. Now, if my passion was to be in the NBA, that's true. So there is a caveat there. It has to be something that you're good at as well. But for the most part, the people that say that you can't follow your passions are the ones that don't like their jobs. So you should be listening to the people that are saying you can follow your passion, because they're the ones who are living it. You want to follow the advice of people who are actually living their own advice. And to be fair, the people who say you can't do it are also living their own advice too. True. I would believe someone can't follow their dream if they show me, here's 100 jobs I've tried in all these different areas, and then I'm like, okay, at least you tried. But, show me that you've tried first.
Yes. If Xanadu is successful in your mission, and the mission is to build quantum computers that are useful and available to people everywhere, if you are successful in that mission, what will the world look like?
That's a hard question, and I honestly don't spend much time thinking about that. My first thought again comes back to well, if you had 10,000 people, they've all got a job. That's crazy. Like out of an idea, and through investors' help and the people that work at Xanadu, we've been able to create something that's given tens of thousands of jobs. Like that's already a future that's worth living. Apart from that, though, the hope in the industry is really quantum computers have found new things that we never thought about solving problems, solving big problems. So, drugs that cost far less, that take far less time to develop because you've been given different types of compute to discover the best candidates, and new materials that we never thought about or we never thought we could discover. So it's a bit vague in terms of that. What are these new materials? It's unknown, but it's the excitement of the unknown. And hopefully, apart from giving people jobs, we're also importantly doing something great in Canada, which we're really proud of. We haven't gone to the States or anything like that. We have no intention to. And so doing something great for Canada, building a great deep tech company in Canada, and also giving people jobs. As I mentioned, we have 200 people. Over half of them have come from overseas, and now have become, a lot of them end up becoming permanent residences, and then they go on to becoming citizens as well, if they can. And so that's a great success story. So continuing those kind of themes, I think that would be a fantastic future.
I love how passionate you are about your team and giving people jobs, because I've actually thought about this more as a founder and starting to build up my own team. I really think, as cheesy as it sounds, it's one of the best ways to change somebody's life for the better.
Yes.
Is to give them a job that they love, where they get to use the full extent of their skills and expertise. Because we spend so much time at work, especially at Xanadu.
Yes.
We're spending a lot of time at work. It takes up a big percentage of our lives. Wouldn't you want to work on something meaningful, something that you can't wait to get out of bed in the morning for?
Yeah, and that's the only way to work hard. Kind of the carrot rather than the stick allows you to do it. Now, you still need a discipline to do it, but the foundation is there. There's a lot of hate on billionaires, which I don't like or understand. I guess I understand it, but it's not really reality, I think, because they do so much good. If you look at Jeff Bezos, I've always thought his biggest achievement, through different types of, whether it's part-time and full-time, through founding Amazon, he's given 1 million people or more jobs. Yeah. 1 million people. Like, if someone's going to be critical of that, like, show me how many people you've given a job to. And now I get the criticisms, like how much money is too much, but still, he created that along with his team. He's done amazing things. Same with Elon Musk. Like, it's just wild what these entrepreneurs have done. And I hope Xanadu can do something similar, but do this in Canada, but also have a worldwide reach as well.
I love that. Christian, I want to move into our lightning round. I've got 5 questions for you to get some actionable takeaways for our audience.
Sounds great.
First up, complete this sentence. To me, building a notable brand means
showing that you love what you're doing and you love the product.
What has been a memorable mic drop moment for Xanadu?
Well, that's an easier one, because 2 years ago, the team demonstrated quantum supremacy. So essentially that's, you choose a well-defined, it's a math problem, and that is a hard problem. And so it would have taken the world's fastest supercomputer at the time 7 million years to solve. Our computer, which we called Borealis, solved it in 2 minutes. So that was
7 million years
7 million
to 2
years
minutes?
to 2 minutes. It was a huge, it's probably one of the biggest mic drops ever.
That's a big mic drop.
It's big. And we were the first startup to demonstrate that, and the first time in Canada. So that team did amazing work on that.
Is quantum supremacy the same as quantum advantage?
Yeah, it's one of these things that's debatable. Everyone has their own definition. The other phrase is quantum computational advantage, but for the most part, they're all the same. People can get riled up, but it's a big thing. I guess people also use quantum advantage for when you do that same 7 million years to 2 minutes for a business problem, which we're all working towards. towards now.
That needs to be on a t-shirt.
Exactly.
What takes you
Yes.
7 million years, we can do in 2 minutes.
Exactly.
What's one brand that you admire and why?
Well, I would say SpaceX. It's a great brand. A huge fan of Elon Musk and what he's done and continues to do. And I mean, you just watch the rocket launches, and they have a really great. You can see people care about this product and what they're trying to do and the mission ultimately. And they also, I go sometimes to their shop, SpaceX shop, and they got products that just looks like also people love what they do, and you want to buy them. So SpaceX would be my answer.
What are a handful of resources you'd recommend to someone looking to build their personal or corporate brand?
I would answer that as read, and read nonfiction and biographies. And then you've got all your answers you ever need in that.
What's up and coming for you, and where can people connect with you and follow Xanadu?
They can follow Xanadu on, we have our Twitter handle. It's at Xanadu AI, and we're on LinkedIn as well. And next up for me really is last year and a half I've been doing a lot of traveling. We're looking to raise again, possibly end of this year. We've got a few big milestones and announcements to come out from the hardware over the coming few months. So we'll get them out and then reassess, build on that momentum. So what that means is upcoming for me is a lot of traveling still, traveling to a lot of sovereign wealth funds around the world, Southeast Asia, Middle East, and also the pension funds here in Canada as well, trying to get them even more excited about quantum computing.
Christian, this was an incredibly insightful conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to Get Mic'd. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. I look forward to bringing you more engaging conversations with thought leaders, sharing their insights on building a notable brand. We'll see you next time.